本当？見えないでしょ？どこにいるのかな？見えないよ。What's good, Internet? It's Friday, April 10th, and you're listening to Waypoint Radio, episode 305. I'm your host, Austin Walker. I'm joined today, once again, by a victorious, beaten the disease, Gita Jackson.
Hello.
Hi, how you doing, Gita?
No longer ill, and
Good.
It feels amazing.
Good. Also with us, Ricardo Contreras. How you doing, Ricardo?
Good. Well, okay. All right, better than yesterday.
Okay, yeah, well, yes, we'll get to that. Also joining us, Rob Zachney, who I believe last I saw was deep in the trenches on Twitter, fighting people with bad takes.
Look, I just enjoy having liberals try to call my manager. I am the manager.
Come get it. We wanna put 10 minutes on the clock. Do you want to do our politics update? I'll do it. I'm gonna put 10 minutes on the clock.
Let's tear this Band-Aid off.
Let's just do it. Absolutely. Rob, you're the one who has been deepest in these minds, as you just suggested. Do you wanna dig in? We have 10 minutes on the clock starting now.
No, I mean, like, my position has been pretty simple, and like I've said this for months. Like, Joe Biden was the candidate I was not sure I would be able to motivate myself to vote for come November. That remains the case. And there are a lot of folks who find that morally abhorrent and disgusting and think pointing out fairly obvious things is going to change my mind, as if that hasn't occurred to me. But the issue is,
you've been a really savvy political thinker up until this one thing, Rob. Now you've suddenly stopped.
Holy shit! There's a Supreme Court, and they get lifetime appointments. RBG is how old? So, I mean, I think there's a few issues here. One is that I'm not saying I'm voting for Trump. That would absolutely not happen. The question is whether I actually vote for Biden, or whether I think a Biden presidency could actually be more destructive to the things that I care about than a Biden defeat. Right now, my suspicion is that Trump is in general a weakening president. I don't think, we're in the early stages of this COVID disaster, and it's possible that because of the sort of creeping authoritarianism of the Republican Party, they will continue the work of trying to make free and fair elections in this country difficult, if not impossible. I do kind of worry about an ineffective Biden presidency basically teeing up the next Trump.
Yeah.
This has been the concern for me for a while in a lot of ways. I think we've seen across the board the reward for little as possible center-left governance has been the rise of a reactionary right. And this is not just a U.S. phenomenon. This is everywhere. And so at some point, you have to break that pattern. And I think Biden is very consciously of a piece with that pattern. That is, in fact, the sales pitch, is that he's going to restore the Obama years. He's going to heal the soul of the country. But he's going to do that by the sort of cautious incrementalism that we've seen from center-left parties for the last 10 years, if not more. And so I do have misgivings about whether a Biden victory is actually a victory in the long term, or whether that sets up a recurring crisis, and in fact a worse one when the fundamentals are more against us.
Yeah, totally. I think it's probably worth noting here too that there is the other thing that we can say pretty strongly about center Democratic policies is we're seeing them play out in real time in a sense. Yeah. There was a moment, there was a political opportunity for which we could have pushed for universal coverage for real, a universal health care for single payer, for some other system other than a marketplace administered by the government. And instead, what we got was the marketplace. And now, in the middle of a healthcare crisis, we've seen what that one. It was a marketplace that could be attacked and is still being attacked further, pretty handedly by the right the second they got control again. Partially because it didn't become a way of life. Right, so many people still get healthcare through their employers and not through the Affordable Care Act's marketplace. And so because of that, it's something that you don't necessarily have the political will to defend. It becomes really hard to raise the sort of support to protect it. But also, it would fail this situation. It has failed this situation. We need Medicare for all. We need a single payer option. We need something. I would prefer Medicare for all, but the fact that the vast majority of people are uninsured, or not the vast majority of people, but there are so many people who are uninsured in this country, means that a crisis like this is felt that much harder, and it's felt across marginalized lines most of all. And so in some ways, it makes this moment makes the Biden pitch that much worse. For me, the thing I keep coming back around is to try to push the conversation where I have this conversation away from individual choice around what Biden will do, or whether or not I will vote for Biden or not. I live in New York. New York is going to go blue. It would be if New York goes red, then we've lost the presidency no matter what. Like, there is no win, right? Then we're seeing some Reagan shit happen, which I don't expect. And I don't want to get into my doom and gloom around thinking that Trump might win here. But what I do want to talk about is try to reframe that conversation around whether or not I will vote for Biden, and instead say unequivocally, right now, there are lots of people who will not vote for Biden. And I don't just mean Bernie supporters or leftists. I mean, there are lots of people who will not vote for Biden who would have potentially voted for Bernie or for another Democratic candidate. Like, I don't have complete blinders on here. I think a Kamala Harris moves more people to the polls than Joe Biden does. And I don't like Kamala Harris at fucking all. And I suspect that he will try to like get some support by picking a VP like Harris. But I think what the center needs to understand is that the people who were going to show up to vote for a Bernie, even some of whom would have voted for a Warren, may not show up for Biden because they feel so disinterested by what is at the table, what options are available to them. They are also swing voters just that they swing between not voting and voting instead of swinging between voting Republican and voting Democrat. And what I'm curious to see is whether or not there will be a larger adoption of progressive leftist values, even in name, by the Biden campaign. Right now, what I see is a lot of empty words. What I've seen is him adopting, a couple of plans from Warren and Sanders that are fine, but are not the prospectus. Do you know what I mean? Like, you need to bring vision in along with policy. You need to make it clear that, Biden said in his statement after Bernie dropped out, which is the kind of frame, by the way, for this whole conversation that we haven't actually explicitly said, is that Bernie suspended his campaign, did not drop out of the race, suspended his campaign, is still collecting votes, is still collecting delegates so that he can have a larger sway at the convention, at what will probably be a virtual convention at this point, by which I really mean, I don't know what it's going to look like. I'm suspicious of it. But I want to see I'm curious to see if Biden does more than what he kind of says in that or commits to kind of what he said in that statement, which was basically like, wow, Bernie Sanders and co really did their issues. Everyone talks about them. We're all committed to the same issues. It's just that we think we have to go different paths to get there. It's like, motherfucker, you are not committed to free college. You're not. Like, you can't convince me that Joe Biden thinks that everyone should have free college. It's never been a thing he's said.
Yes, he explicitly said that he would veto Medicare for all, even if it was passed by the House and the Senate. So we can't pretend that this is a person that's actually going to commit themselves to progressive policies. He's made it very, very clear that he does not give a single shit about them. So we're left wondering, what it is that he will do to quarter votes, and the answer will, of course, be nothing, which is what the DNC has always done with the progressive left. They've done absolutely nothing. So it's just going to be Trump again, and we have to just start to put our energies elsewhere. Like, I've immediately started to dig into like mutual aid groups in the neighborhood that I live in Brooklyn, because I need to put my political energy somewhere else other than electoralism, because this shit's just not going to work out my way, which sucks ass. But I can't. That doesn't mean that people still don't need help, and that there aren't ways that I can help them.
Well, the other thing is, like, my suspicion is, I think Biden in an ordinary election probably would have lost. I don't think we're going to have an ordinary election in November. I think there's a very good chance that this, the combination of the fumbling of COVID and the ensuing economic fallout will be devastating to the incumbent, as these things usually are. This is a pretty strong pattern in American politics. But one of the things that I've observed just following politics throughout my life is that Democrats' wins, the ones they tend to point to as justifying their pragmatism, the ones they point to as saying we know what we're doing, this is how elections work in this country. Democrats win when the temperature in the pot is so intense that the frog suddenly jumps out. When you look at the 2006 election that basically ended the Bush era, the reason 2006 went the way it did is because Iraq finally went so catastrophically wrong that it was undeniable that the invasion had been a complete debacle, and not only immoral, but was also just ineptly handled and had sailed completely off the rails. The other thing that happened prior to the 2006 election was Hurricane Katrina.
Right.
If the Democratic formula for victory is that, well, eventually the guys we keep losing to will fuck up so badly that tons of people will die and American cities will be devastated, and then we'll sweep in and return things to normal, that's a pretty bad. That's a bad strategy. Because there's no proactive element to it, right? There's just, we're going to sit around waiting for people to suffer, and then we will swoop in and not help them. We'll just reap the benefits of their suffering.
I am concerned that this is a different moment for a couple of reasons.
Yeah.
One is that I think the GOP is different. I think we've seen a maturation of what was an insurgent Tea Party, party, become rooted in the party in a way that gives a sort of intensity and zealotry to a large part of that base that will not defect. I think that the kind of consent machine is well honed in a way that 2006 Fox News had not quite even hit yet. And most importantly, I think that this moment is different than Katrina. You can see it. Katrina, you can see. New Orleans was a disaster for a long time. This is New Orleans is not a brutalist town, but the response to Katrina is a brutalist response. You see the truth of the situation. The 1918 flu epidemic was hidden in America. Numbers are abstract. People will lose their family members, and they will remember that. But it's so easy to imagine a world in which the right wing is able to produce a narrative in which this is not as bad as the left says it is. This is not as bad as the Democrats say it is, because the Democrats will. Well, here's the other half of this: is I'm not convinced the Democrats have it in them to get on stage and get on camera and say, this motherfucker killed people. This guy killed people. I need to see that fire, because right now they are understandably focused on disaster relief, on pushing for policies, some of which are good, some of which are trash. They need to have the theater. They need to be able to bring that to bear. And I'm not convinced that the current Democratic, and now maybe that ends up being the VP's job. Because I cannot imagine Biden effectively making a moralist case against Trump and holding him to account in that way. But maybe this is a Kamala Harris job, to be the person who is like swinging the words justice around as if she hadn't been mishandling them her whole career. But without that aspect of it, and with a very nuanced kind of consent machine in the place of Fox News, it's so easy for me to imagine so many Trump supporters, the diehards, buying the lies, which they're going to do no matter what anyway, and I know we can just count them out. And then more importantly, the folks who maybe are currently disenfranchised, or not disenfranchised, but disillusioned of the Trump presidency, thinking, you know what, I actually think he might weather this, and then we get the Supreme Court. We get the Supreme Court for a generation. And that is terrifying to me. And this is not my case to vote for Biden necessarily. This is me just saying, I don't know that there will be enough people coming from the right over to the left, or coming from the center right to the center left, to vote for Biden, for his strategy to be appealing to the center in this election.
Yeah, so that was essentially Hillary Clinton's strategy in 2016, right? And that didn't work for her either. Like, I don't really think that there are, like, the base is so mobilized for the GOP. Like, throughout this entire time when the primary was happening, when they were actually, campaigning, Trump was out having rallies. And he was raising a ridiculous amount of money. And he was doing very well. I mean, he was, sweeping his own primary at the same time. And those people are all going to vote. And, like, I don't know if, like, there's anything Biden can do to mobilize people to vote in the same way. And, like, that is the real battle that's being fought there, right? Is, like, getting people out of the house, vote in the general.
Kata, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna...
Also, I put another 10 on the clock. I will probably put more on after this. We have a lot to unpack. It's been a minute. Kata, go ahead.
I just also want to touch on that point of, like, getting people out to vote. There seems to be this weird rhetoric going around about people saying that in this primary, Biden got the votes, and like saying this thing about Bernie where he didn't get the votes in the primary, so why would we expect he would get votes in the general? As if those two demographics are anywhere alike. Like, there are so many people who are, like, technically registered but would never vote in a primary because they're just not that politically active, because they don't think it's necessary, or because they don't think their vote even fucking matters, right? Like, the thing that, like, to Gita's point, the thing that needed to be done is to get someone who is exciting and invigorating enough to as many people as possible, that this wave of, like, support comes up from people who wouldn't have voted in the primary at all, right? And it just seems ridiculous that this, like, well, how would he have gotten, like, this whole, like, the primary and the general are, like, one to, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Analogous? No.
Analogous.
Maybe.
Analogous, yeah.
Probably. That they're somehow, like, predictor, like, the primary is a predictor for general. The general is, like, ridiculous.
Yeah. I will say one strategy I am curious to see if it gets used here. This is, like, when I think about ways that Biden could mobilize enough people and get people excited to vote for him. Part of it is, like, actually wielding the hammer against Trump in the way that I would like to see the Democrats do, and which, again, is often a VP nominee's job, is to say the quiet part loud and aggressively. But I think Biden's VP will be in a unique situation, partially due to his age, partially due to his on-camera performance, and partially due to the fact that he has said early in his campaign he committed to his aides that he would be running for a single term, which puts his VP in a unique position. But also, I think one strategy that I expect him to see a little bit is to co-opt is a strong word, but potentially co-opt some more Warren and Sanders policies and dress them up like they're theirs. I suspect we'll see a Biden plan for healthcare that maybe that's a single payer option. It's not Medicare for all. Maybe that's a public option, not a single payer option, a public option. Not Medicare for all. But I suspect that we'll see stuff like that. And and kind of the case that I've seen folks make around this style of policy play is that when you look at the results from the primaries, when you look at the results from specifically the exit polling data, you see people who are ready for policy change, but who maybe are more comfortable with a known quantity, like Joe Biden, who represents the Democratic Party's core. And I can imagine him being willing to be a vector for a sanded down version of certain progressive policies that will kind of recoup the lingering Elizabeth Warren voter and kind of the edge case, Bernie Sanders supporter who is here for Sanders's policies, but not necessarily for a larger movement. But I don't know. But I'm curious to see if that happens too.
Austin, you said something a few minutes ago though, about the Democratic Party being focused on disaster relief. I'm not sure that's true.
Yeah, you're totally right.
Because this is
they're focused on talking about it, but they're not. Yes, but you're right. Absolutely.
This is the other aspect of why I am maybe why I am unmoved right now, and why I'm sort of why I'm basically saying, listen, at this point, you now have a job of for me at least, and maybe there's people like me, but maybe there's not. Bernie did lose pretty handily in this primary, so what do I know? But for people like me, I think this primary has created a problem, or it's exacerbated one, which is that I do not see any real benefits from Democratic victories, except in the negative. Oh, well, we'll stop the Republicans doing this for 2 years, for 4 years. But we'll stop Ella. We will bring Ella to justice. No,
She's chewing on all the cables near my computer. I'm so sorry. She does need to be brought to justice.
Wow.
Do they make deterrent spray for cats?
Yes.
Yeah, they do. I just didn't spray it yet today because I crawled out of bed and immediately got on the computer to podcast.
That's right.
we ran out ages ago. Our Mina repellent supplies were exhausted early in this crisis, and so we've just been frantically swooping across the apartment trying to peel her off of various cables and chargers. But no, so I think where I'm at right now is, in a crisis, what the Democratic Party and the Democratic leadership sprang into action to do was, by and large, rush large amounts of cash into the finance sector. And
the same exact shit they did during the financial crisis in 2008, which helped fucking no one except the banks.
Right, exactly. And so I think this does go beyond Biden in some ways, which is that this is a party that likes to make a show of there's always a crisis. Their self-justifying position is that it's always too important to sit this out. We have to act now because the stakes, if we do not, are that these awful, unspeakable things will happen. But then when the crisis actually arrives, what you see the Democrats generally do is not function as an opposition. They actually do not seem to throw up many roadblocks at all to the GOP pursuing its agenda. And instead, they work very quickly to facilitate really interesting aspects of that agenda, right? And one of those was the Senate voting unanimously to pass a coronavirus relief bill that seemed to relieve the pressure on the industries really least affected by this. And this week, we've seen the Small Business Administration is predictably completely overwhelmed by the number of requests they're getting for aid from small businesses that need relief getting through this crisis. But if you are a large cap firm, especially if you're a finance firm, you have limitless access to cheap and easy credit right now. And that was brought to you by a unanimous Democratic vote, voting with the Republicans. Mm-hmm. And the Democrats did receive really no meaningful concessions in exchange for that. And so I think the other part of this for me is I actually am deeply concerned about the direction of the country and the direction of the GOP moving in sort of a corporate authoritarian direction. But if the crisis really is here, then I would expect that urgency to be reflected by Democratic leadership. You know, I don't need, like right now there's a lot of liberals who are very quick to play the role of, you know, minority whip on you if they sense that you're not enthusiastic enough about supporting whoever the Democrats are putting up for the general. But if you look at what the Democratic leadership is doing, you don't see that urgency. You don't see that commitment to oppositional politics. You don't even see commitment to really doing politics. And so that's the other thing is I'm looking at like from now until November, and I'm sitting here being like, show me something. Yeah. Like, give me any reason to believe that supporting you will provide meaningful pushback to these trends that genuinely terrify me.
I feel you. Yeah, I guess the last thing I want to wrap back around to here is something that Gita touched on, and something that I said on Twitter, which is that if you felt energized by the Sanders campaign, you know, by the kind of ability to feel like you were, you know, part of something bigger, working towards a goal, the thing that I encourage you to do is to do the legwork, do the research, find something local to get involved with. That can be a candidate that you respect a great deal and whose policies are you know in line with yours, but it can also be, you know, like Gita said, a mutual aid program especially during the kind of COVID-19 outbreak. It can be a smaller scale political organization. It could be a particular activist group that focuses on an issue you care about, like prison reform or climate change. Like these groups exist, and they are imperfect. As someone
are
who
they ever
has been through that, I know, Rob, you've also been going through it to some degree currently. But that is partly why they need your energy, right? Because when they are left to only the people who care the most, there's not enough people to go around. And in a moment like this, there's a lot of political energy where you could redirect that energy into something local. And I promise you will actually see some changes locally quicker than you will see national change from backing a larger political organization or a specific candidate. Like, you can change your hometown in a few years in substantial ways. You know, your voice, you know, at the city council meeting where you were talking about what policy should be for homelessness is not something that you will be heard in that capacity. People might not like what you say, but some people might be convinced. And you can build those relationships locally in a way that you cannot nationally. I need people to, if they feel that gap in their hearts, to look into this, because this is how you win. This is how you win in the long run, right? This is how I win. Is I get everyone to join their local, you know, local branch. I think Gita blue screened.
Yeah.
I think Ella silenced her.
Ella said, "No more politics talk." You went over your 10 minutes.
Wrecker Ella.
We can keep talking about this. I'm not trying to stop this conversation.
I will say, in terms of that local politics stuff too.
Yeah, do you want to talk
stuff
about your
obviously
experience
matters
at all?
No, I mean, I don't. I will just say, like, a lot of local groups, for one thing, they're dominated by older, well-to-do people. Because those are the folks who have the time and leisure to get involved with stuff like that, which means you're automatically, like, you are going to be confronting some of the same gaps that have already frustrated us with the primary election, right? There's a lot of people who are there are a lot of people who think that having been alive during the 60s means they get to be smug about its progressive victories. And you will absolutely encounter people who cite having come up in the civil rights movement to justify why they should be in charge of this or that committee or something like that. And I'm like, motherfucker, you would have been like 8. Like, you didn't come up during shit. But I think those groups do need younger folks, and they do need more representative folks from their communities. And people in local progressive groups can be frustrating because it can be a sort of self-selecting group, and they can be a little bit out of touch. But to their credit, a lot of them do know that, right? They're not oblivious to the fact that they're not representative. They're not oblivious to the fact that they struggle to speak to their broader community. They're just not sure how to bridge that gap. Yeah. And I think one issue that I see a lot is that there are there's a patchwork of different groups working toward the same ends, but all serving different demographic groups of a geographic community. But demographically, they're all speaking to different subsets of it. And those groups are really bad at talking to each other or even fully being aware that they're out there. And I don't know how to solve that. Those groups serve really specific communities for good reasons. But at the same time, there is some power and strength in consolidation. And that is something that I observe being a tension. The tension between having a group that really advocates for your people, like the folks in your immediate community, in your specific neighborhood, versus the fact that probably more would get done if groups doing similar work across 8 different neighborhoods work together in one block. But that is, and I'm not even sure necessarily those disagreements are real. It is that they just genuinely don't speak to each other much, and they certainly don't consider consolidation, which I find is an interesting dynamic. I find
totally. I feel like this is like the for me, this is like the motivator for why folks in our generation have to get more involved. Is because I think that there is, don't love generational talk generally, but there is a generational divide in thinking about community as being something either local or being based on affinity, being based on a likeness in terms of impulse, in terms of aesthetic, in terms of goal. And so I suspect that if a lot of these groups get an injection of younger folks, there is a greater chance than the kind of old guard, than with the old guard, to build those bridges to other similar groups that are acting in the same general direction, because it's what we do all the time anyway. We are constantly networking in the virtual space and in the internet online, as they say, and so I would suspect that's another big bonus for getting some younger folks in the mix in those places.
But I think it's genuinely tough, because the thing is, I'm getting more involved in this right now because a few things have changed. My career is, knock on wood, extremely hard right now. My career has been stable of late, for the first time in my life. Whether it's going to be stable in the future, I don't know, man. The economy is melting down in unprecedented fashion. But it's been stable of late. I've lived in the same place for like 3 years in a row, which is kind of an unprecedented streak for me. And that's freed up the bandwidth to get involved with stuff like this. But when I think about, where I was at 5, 6, 7 years ago, it's not that I wanted to become involved any less. It's that literally I just didn't have the resources and bandwidth to take time to do that. This stuff takes an incredible amount of time. And I think a thing that you will have thrown at younger progressives pretty eagerly is that they don't show up, they don't participate, they don't put in the work to move the agenda in these groups. Well, a lot of these groups are set up to serve the interests of a non-transient population of people who are generally homeowners, right? People who are going to be living in the same place for 10, 15 years, not changing neighborhoods, changing apartments as rent changes in the area every 2 or 3 years. And they don't have to scramble to come up with their rent or mortgage money every month, right? Like, getting groceries and paying for shelter is not the thing that occupies their thoughts from the moment their feet hit the floor in the morning. If that is your reality, boy, it sure is tough to feel good about the 2-hour meeting trying to figure out what very small actions your local group is going to take part in. And I totally understand why a lot of younger folks of more limited means and of more, frankly, demanding occupations have difficulty buying in to these processes. There is an upfront cost that is tough to pay, even if you found it worthwhile.
I also think, I've definitely seen some folks right now specifically saying that, hey, I was part of, some sort of mutual aid group or, some sort of action group locally, and they're having a hard time adjusting to COVID-19. And that is, my heart goes out to the folks trying to figure out how to make it work so that they can do good work right now. It's hard to know. Yeah, go ahead. What were you going to add?
No, I was just you go on because I have a different thought.
No, you go ahead. I want to. What is your thought?
Speaking of like local politics, though, I think the other thing that has really been driven home of late is that, again, in terms of the voting blue thing, it does kind of feel like a lot of local governments that are dominated by Democrats some of them have really spectacularly dropped the ball during this. And that is a thing that is worth reckoning with, right? Is that it's been clear there's been irresponsibility at the very top of the federal response, but I look at the scope of the tragedy in New York and how uniquely bad it seems within the United States right now. And it is tough not to think about the cavalier way that Mayor de Blasio approached this crisis and the really complacent way Andrew Cuomo has governed the state of New York for a number of years, right? Like there was table setting for this that I think liberals are sometimes a little bit oblivious to. And then when the crisis arrives, you see a little bit more rallying around blue leadership. But it's worth examining how we got to this moment on the local level as well.
Well, and I think one of the things that I think is hopefully will shake out in the long run, but who knows, is the ways in which the ways in which other options were available. I think you'll see this in terms of looking at the discrepancy of how different cities and states reacted to COVID-19, with some taking it more seriously than others, and others having mayors who go to the Y. And for that matter, and this here we're specifically talking about Democrat mayors, right? But for that matter, let's talk about there are absolutely, and I hope that these folks are held accountable too, places where governors refuse to close beaches, where mayors refuse to close beaches. I suspect we'll see. I suspect it will be a little unpredictable because it's not clear who in which communities will have been the person who was speaking truth to power in the right moment, who was taking shit seriously. Though I do suspect it will not be the dude from Florida who said his son found a cure on the internet and the cure was like deer repellent or whatever the fuck. Did you see that clip?
No.
Oh my God.
That's extraordinary.
It's so good. It's just unbelievable. I'll look up the thing. It wasn't repellent. It was something else. It was, God, I forget what it was. But it was some local, I actually think it was a state level politician, not a local politician. But I will link you that clip afterwards. I don't even know what to search for right now. I think I'll just dig through an old chat and see if I can find it there.
Well, this is another case for why like local media is so important and why it's never been more precarious too.
Yes.
That's another aspect of this, which is how devastating this crisis has been.
Okay,
for
it was
media outfits.
It was a county commissioner who first oh, this is what's happening. This is why you have to get involved in local politics. This motherfucker has a position. The first clip is him saying that you could kill coronavirus by holding a blow dryer up your nose. Because he saw that, of course, on the One American News Network. The secret, super right-wing, I say secret, except it's an extremely successful news network for folks who think that Fox News is a little too diluted. I think you stepped on Fox News a little too much. Give it to me raw. Give me that One American News Network. And the second thing he comes to the table with was that his son discovered a cure that's called nano ozone vapor, which is a device hunters use to mask their scent from deer. And he's convinced that this is it. This is the thing that's going to save everyone. And these motherfuckers are the folks who locally are in positions to make decisions around things like whether or not there should be a rent freeze, or whether or not what sort of resources should be available for small businesses in town. One of the reasons why even just getting involved in local government and like holding these people to account is important is because it helps make sure that the people who are in place when a crisis hits are not the people telling you to go online and buy deer masking spray to protect you from the virus.
If you stay upwind of COVID,
Fuck.
well, to be fair, being upwind of COVID would actually probably help out if only you knew where upwind of COVID was. God, that's incredible.
There are
This
two.
is a-
Can I go ahead, Kato?
Just like, I feel like this is a thing that shouldn't need to be said, but like, labels mean shit. You know, fucking someone says Democrat. What the fuck does that mean anymore? Like, it doesn't mean shit. So fucking just, I don't know. Like, if you know people who vote on party lines for that reason, like, make them take a second look at policy. You know, like,
You gotta,
try to get
you gotta
the
take a
word
little
out.
bite of that coin. Like, bite that
Fucking-
coin.
yeah.
See if it.
Uh-huh.
God. Gita. Oh, I thought Gita was back.
Yeah.
No,
Gita was back, and I think we might have a bigger problem than
Uh-oh.
just. Gita came back, and now Gita is not back.
Yeah,
And,
I'm chatting with her. We're working it out.
Okay.
We're gonna make it happen. I
Ella
think.
really, really out here causing a problem.
Look, Ella just needs to silence Bernie Sphere Media
Yeah.
and
Oh.
bring the party back together.
Don't do Ella like that. You know,
No,
Ella is way better than Matt Iglesias. Iglesias, come on, please. I can't, Rob. We can't go down this route.
when a brooding appears on the screen, Ella's just like,
Oh, we can't go down the route of talking about fucking Twitter.
but Austin and I invested time trying to figure out what the fuck was happening with Iglesias' account today, so now I want to make jokes about it.
Well, okay,
because
what is happening?
this morning,
Okay,
I was
can
baffled.
you set up? Okay, we're off the rails anyway. Gita's not back yet. We're not allowed to talk about video games. Okay.
Oh fuck.
Where do you begin? Where do you begin to introduce someone to Matthew Iglesias?
Well, see, here's the thing. I kind of like the guy sometimes.
Okay. Why?
Because sometimes there's good takes.
Yeah, of course, but that's not a reason to like someone. That's a reason to like their take sometimes.
Well, yeah,
Sometimes those takes are okay,
but takes are what he does.
Yeah,
but
that is
Like, what
he
else does
does.
Matt Iglesias do?
So what did you find from your deep dive into Matt Iglesias's?
So it appeared yesterday Iglesias reached the conclusion that the real problem facing Biden right now is that Bernie Sphere Media, which includes Chapo, Jacobin, and the Brunigs, which is two people, by the way. That's just two people that Iglesias seems to argue with.
Hey, wait a second.
Twitter.
Rob, they have a Patreon.
So do I. It's just people. So there's a married couple that Iglesias gets owned by, apparently. And this is a problem for Biden because Bernie can't control these folks. Even if Bernie says, I like Joe Biden, he and I are cool, I totally support his election, Bernie Sphere Media hates the guy, doesn't trust him, and is going to continue exacerbating this rift that's opened up in the Democratic Party. Which was a really specific take, in part because of the Brunigs reference. But it did seem to be more about the way that maybe Iglesias has interacted with people he identifies as Bernie Sphere Media rather than being an actual political dynamic at work in the country. Like, I think there's an element of this. Like, yeah, the far left is skeptical of Biden, but I don't think that's not paranoid Bernie Sphere like fantasy. That is, there is an actual substantive reservation about what good Biden and the Democrats give you.
Yeah.
But Iglesias, since yesterday, has been sort of pursuing this take and has started RTing things that prove he is correct, which appears to be finding people who or being mean to you, screen capping it, and being like, see, this is what I mean. And if you're just seeing that in your timeline, divorced of context, which is how Twitter beef always appears to people who are outside of it, it just looks absurd. And really good.
The people listening to us right now must be thinking that we have lost our minds talking about this Twitter beef. But I promise you, it was fun to watch happen and also infuriating, as many things that Matt Iglesias have said in the past have been. So what I'm going to do is remind everyone of the terrible Matt Iglesias piece from only 7 years ago that has the Slate piece with the headline.
Oh, is this the safety standards?
Different places have different safety rules, and that's okay. And it's a bad blog. It was an age of blogs, and it was an age of folks with a lot of privilege saying it's okay that Bangladesh doesn't protect its workers, actually, because it's over. Listen, the rules just aren't appropriate here, you know?
Well, but that is so
we're more risk averse.
That is so representative, though, of the entire dynamic of neoliberalism at the time. Like, I remember, I think it was like Nicholas Kristof talking about, it might seem to be bad to you that a young woman in, like, it was like Vietnam or Cambodia at the time, spends 10 hours a day picking through a landfill trying to find things she can salvage for a recycling job. But he's like, but to her, that's a great job. She's making more doing.
Her life has changed in a positive way.
Relative benefits
dignity.
Get
the fuck out of here.
This was such a mainstream view at the time, and it's only in retrospect that it's only become clear to most people now that this was always self-serving bullshit. But at the time, there were a lot of folks who were moved by that logic. It is good that American manufacturing is being devastated and wages are being depressed here because these folks over here are allowed to work in unsafe workplaces and die in industrial accidents or get slowly sickened picking over a Superfund site, if Superfund were a thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This American mythology of the freedom of choice is so disturbing, and I think the only thing COVID's done that could even be possibly construed as positive in the broadest possible terms is reveal to everyone exactly how fucked our systems are. And part of this is the American obsession with the idea that having the choice to do things makes whatever you choose better because you chose it. Well, you could choose to go to the park right now with like a whole bunch of friends. And you know what? That would be a bad fucking choice. And maybe you should not choose that.
Maybe you shouldn't. Maybe there should be some regulations in place to prevent bad actors from making that choice.
But what if your landlord is demanding money from you so that you and your friends have to go to a place to all congregate together to provide... like to restock a store, for instance, for other workers in a similar boat to show up.
That's okay, because you made a choice to get into a rental agreement with your landlord. That was your choice.
Exactly. That was a choice you had. You definitely had a choice.
There was totally another option somewhere.
Why don't you just pay someone to do the dangerous thing while you're safe in the home that you own? That's obviously the reasonable choice. Come on.
Christ.
God. Or that thing, there's that H-Bomber guy video where he does the thing where he bursts through a wall to make a joke and blah, blah, blah. But, Ben Shapiro
sell them
saying...
to who? Yeah.
So Ben Shapiro is saying, people affected by climate change can just choose to sell their houses. Like, who's fucking buying them? Who's buying those houses, you idiot?
Well, that is also the correct response to that Hillary Clinton tweet from last week about how badly we need healthcare marketplaces.
Excuse me?
Did you not see this?
No.
Yeah, no, I did see that where she said the choice is obvious, and the second sentence was, we need to reopen the marketplace. And it's like, no, bitch, come on. We've been so long.
Yes, that was the tweet to which that was I'm not just going to repeat a tweet I can't even remember I made, so fuck it. I thought it would be my top tweet for the month, but that's not the case because I made a tweet about John Cena, which became much more important, unfortunately.
Of course.
Obviously. Me, I can't afford dinner. Hillary Clinton, we need more restaurants.
Yeah.
All right, we're out of the politics minute. I know that it lasted 40 minutes. But
to be fair, 20 minutes of that were Phil.
20 minutes of that were, you know what I want to say really quick, Rob? We could do an hour. Put me on the stage anywhere. I'll fill a fucking hour. We got it. I was doing a show. I was doing a thing.
Pod Save America impresses you people? Watch us hold it the fuck down.
I did 30 minutes on yawning once. I was someone who I was doing a live show with or a live event with who had never done anything live before, and they were super nervous. Which is understandable. If you've never done anything like it before, it can be really like nervous to be like, I'm going to stand up in front of 100 people or whatever. It was more than that even, and talk about whatever. And I was like, well, first of all, you're going to be talking about the shit you do. You guys do a podcast together. You're going to talk about that podcast. You're going to feel really excited about talking about the workflow that you go through because you never get to talk about that to an interested audience. And like shop talk is just fun. You'll like it. But two, I promise we could hold it down for an hour. Watch. Give me any topic. And someone yawned, and I was like, "We're going to talk for 30 minutes right now, entertainingly about yawning." And then we did it, and it was a really great warm up, especially because I didn't know these people. We were about to do a show together, and secretly, it was a good way for me to just like get their cadence. And it turns out, listen, put a fucking microphone anywhere. I'll sell ice in the winter. I'll sell fire in hell. I'm a hustler, baby. I'll sell water to a well. Like that's how it is. Video games? Can we talk about them? Can we talk about video games? I beat 2 video games yesterday.
Wow.
Hot damn.
2.
Yeah, Bernie lost, and I was like, I gotta become a gamer. Bernie pulled out of the race, and I was like, I gotta drown myself in the beautiful. What's up?
Internal exile, baby.
120,000 people were watching that on Twitch, so
That's true, including me. I was one of those true gamers. Gamers rise. I was seeing the credits to Animal Crossing while Bernie was suspending the campaign. Beautiful credit sequence.
Yeah.
It's really, really so good.
It's so good. I'm very excited for the next phase of this. I've laid down my paths. My Animal Crossing town has like a nice downtown area now. Getting ready for the next KK Slider performance. Excited. Saturday nights. Here we go.
You know the way you know that fucking Tom Nook is a fake fan?
How?
That fucking the audio that he gives you of the quote unquote concert is not even a KK version of that song.
Oh no, yeah, that's
It's
not
just-
no,
It's
and it's
like,
certainly
what
not what
the
I
fuck?
expect
What
from
the
a real
fuck is
fan,
this?
which is a concert bootleg. I think you
Right.
should have been there with the backpack on.
Absolutely.
I've been to a Dave Matthews Band show, Nook. You should have
just
had the backpack on. You should have had the whole audio setup, getting high quality rips.
Look, he set up the fucking concert. He could have gotten
Also,
the
wait,
rights and
pause. Can I spoil Animal Crossing?
shit. Is that
Because there's a minute in that sequence that is unbelievable to me.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna. Yes, we should spoil that.
I'm gonna spoil the credit sequence of Animal Crossing. So jump ahead by 5 minutes if you don't want to. Kato, can you put a timestamp in the description? There will be a timestamp in the description. So early on in this game, once you've gotten your island going, it becomes clear that the long-term goal is to bring KK Slider here to do a concert. This is Tom Nook's dream. It's to be It's to be so wealthy, so rich, so magnanimous in his nature, and to so appealing, to build a place so appealing that his fave will come play the guitar, which is actually a pretty good caricature of real billionaires.
Yeah.
It's like Bobby Axelrod, but sneaky.
It is 100% like the only thing stopping him from being James Dolan is that Tom Nook doesn't pick up the guitar. The thing that happens is that Tom Nook says, "Okay, we got to get enough people here. We got to make the island pretty enough. We got to put up enough fencing. We got to make it look like it's a happening spot, and raise our island Yelp rating high enough that someone famous like KK Slider will come." So you do all this shit. You invite more people. You spend $10,000 per housing plot that then Tom Nook theoretically sells to somebody else and recoups that cost. Don't worry, you get it back in Nook miles. Fuck out of here.
That's not even the correct conversion of
it's not even the correct conversion.
They're fucking. They're selling.
Yeah, of course they are. You make things a little bit.
10,000 bells and you get 1,000 Nook miles.
1,000
That's
Nook miles.
tough.
Get fucked.
Up. And there's a cap on how many lots you can sell too.
Is there really? Am I out
Yeah.
now? Because I have
I'm
8.
out now.
Okay.
I've sold all my lots.
Okay.
I can't sell another lot. I tried.
So you do all the shit. You get the stuff better. You talk to Isabel. Isabel's like, "This is a 1-star island. There's too many objects on the ground." And I'm like, "Yeah, Isabel, they're called turnips. You don't let me store them in my storage. They gotta wait out here until I see an uptick somewhere, and then put in the dodo code from the random Twitter thread I saw." Though now the degree of sophistication that has happened on the turnip market is through the roof.
It's honestly
algorithms.
incredible.
There's the algorithm that now has an accurate prediction on what your turnip swing will be.
Yeah.
Did that story go up on the site?
Yes.
Yeah.
People should go check that out.
Even since that, they've added more things to that tool, like whether or not you bought from your Daisy May for the first time also affects the outcome.
Oh, interesting.
And what your pattern was the previous week also does, and they've added those things into the tool at this point as well.
Incredible.
That's amazing.
There is. I'm going to shout out another wild thing. There is now like an escrow site. It's not really an escrow site. It's like a line. It's not escrow. It's not. But I wanted to use a word that I think is fun to describe what it really is, which is it's a virtual line. Player A says, "Hey, I have turnips at X good price. I am going to let people in 2 at a time." And then player B through J or whatever, B through O, go to that site and say, "Hey, I want to sell my turnips at this person. What's the code?" And then,
oh no, dude, this is a dark pool. What you're describing?
Thank you. Yes, of course. Thank you. That is exactly what it is. And then the gates open one at a time. You get the code. You have to wait, and it's very, very, very funny. Anyway, my point is, I had to pick up those turnips. It's called turnip.exchange. So yeah, keep that in mind. There are discords or private discords that I know about. It's a whole thing. The dark web is here for Animal Crossing turnips. So I had to pick up all my turnips. I have to get rid of the fencing. I have to you have to go through the whole thing of making my island pretty, right? Put out some lamp posts, put out some nice outdoor furniture. I have a whole little park area now. Do some more gardening. And so finally we get up to a 3-star. This is a spoiler. This is for real. This is a spoiler. I go, "Hey, what is my Yelp rating, Isabel? How's the island coming?" I want to note she would not have done this if I did not check in with her. In retrospect, I'm glad I sat down and actually said, "Hey, how is my island doing? We got any reviews lately?" And she said, "Oh, you know what? We do. Let me read this one." And it said, "Hey, pretty cool island. I was thinking about coming to an island like that. Maybe I'll swing by. Signed, KS." And Tom Nook goes, "What? KS? You don't think... Could that have been written by KK Slider?" Oh, okay. One, I guess it's possible. I guess in the wide world of things. But could you imagine if someone with the initials AW left a Yelp review on a Chinese food restaurant in San Francisco, and then someone who worked there was like, "By God, that's Austin Walker. He loves the food. This is the food he wants." Here's the second thing.
That's his intro music.
Right, that's his intro music. 2, if it is KK Slider, then he's already been to the island because he's leaving a Yelp review for it. Or he's a liar and is just going around giving 3-star reviews places, in which case I don't want him on the island. This is not the part that is astounding to me. Here is the part that is astounding to me. Tom Nook sees a 3-star review from KK Slider, from signed KS. 1, jumps to assuming it's KK Slider. 2, he takes out his phone and he calls KK Slider, whose number he already had on his phone.
Fucking bitch ass.
And he goes, "Hello? Is this KK Slider?" And you don't hear the other side. He goes, "Well, I was just thinking if maybe you could. That would be great. That would make my life complete." Motherfucker, you had him on speed dial? And you were like, I know when to call him. It's when we get a 3-star review, a 3 out of 5-star review from someone who might be him. You could have called him at any point. You have, like... Then my friend Janine did point out that sometimes you do wind up with phone numbers that you just shouldn't call. Like, you just get someone in your phone, and that doesn't mean that you have the right to call them and ask them to perform for you. I
thought it was actually that maybe there's like a form that you fill out when you give feedback to the island.
Oh, but then that's a misuse of that form.
Right.
You cannot use...
like, which, of course, Tom Nook would be like, oh yeah, like, we got that number. Now's the time to call.
I know that Delta Airlines has my number. If they ever call me to give a talk and they're like, oh yeah, we had your number from those times that Vice made you use them to buy a flight, I would be like, no, now I'm definitely not doing this. Email me. Anyway, KK came. We did a performance. He played while Bernie Sanders gave his suspension speech. That was sad. But
and it's truly the most beautiful song too. Like it's so good.
It's very good.
Which is why I was extra mad when I got it. I was like, got it. It's like, yeah, great. I love that. I love this rendition of because it's the theme song that plays on the start screen when you like start up the game. But then it's just the exact same song, not the KK version. Which
you got to go to see KK perform. Yeah. KK's performances have an aura. You have to be there. I will say one thing that's been interesting for me is still tangling with what I want from an Animal Crossing game, and I think I really enjoy this game, but I've hit more and more of that feeling where there's stuff I know I'm not going to do because I don't want to do it. So like, I'm never going to rearrange my house. And my houses are not in a very clean grid. There is like a general order, and I like the feeling of them, but in the back of my mind, it's like, oh, I could move these houses around more. But like, I didn't want to place houses to begin with. That's not who I am for Animal Crossing. I want the feeling of someone puts their house in a difficult to reach place, and it's a pain in the ass to go check in on them. I want some of that in Animal Crossing, and I think it's left me in a very weird place because I realized the one thing that is in this game that I have no control over is the eggs, and that is the place that I'm having a bad vibe with that too. So it's like I wanted more tension and less control in this game, and then they were like, yeah, sure, here you go, motherfucker, dig up some eggs. What if every time you dig, you could get an egg? Does that introduce the lack of control you wanted? I was like, no, not like this. This is not what I meant.
Please.
Anyone else have Animal Crossing feelings, or can we move on?
I haven't been because of that fucking island. The eggs, man. It's just killing me. I haven't. It really reveals like when my description of it, it just makes you feel like every single thing in the game is an egg, and it just like takes all the fun out of it while the eggs are present, and it makes you feel like it's a mobile game, like it's a scummy mobile game. It just sucks. I'm
excited to see the not eggs in the future. That's soon. I'm sad to say that today is the last day for the cherry blossoms.
Wait, what?
Yeah, you can see it. You
today
can literally
released or today?
Right
now.
Oh no. Today, right now.
Oh,
by the time you hear this, if you're hearing this, it's already too late.
It's already. Shit, I've only gotten one fucking. I have like 20 goddamn.
That's because of the eggs. You need to just sit by the beach and watch for balloons, because that's where they come from. And you need regular non-egg balloons. I don't know why they overlapped, and they overlapped because Easter is now. But I would have extended the Cherry Blossom Festival thing just another week or something, so that people had a chance to get those, because they're really pretty.
Make the eggs a week shorter.
Isn't the ephemeral untouchable nature of the Sakura kind of the point of the whole thing? Isn't it, when you think about it? Isn't the fact that you can't touch
Austin.
it?
Go fuck yourself. I had big plans for all those recipes. Okay, now I can't do them.
It's frustrating. It's really pretty today because the leaves are all falling off and like going into the river and stuff. It's gorgeous. But it's sad. Things change. Anyone else want to talk about a video game that isn't? Because at some point I'm going to wrap back around to Final Fantasy VII, but I feel like I've dominated a lot of this early conversation. So it looks like when I'm looking at this list of things people have played, it looks like a lot of y'all are dipping into that Control. Is everyone playing the DLC, or Rob? I think you were just replaying.
I'm
the
on
game.
a full replay and just taking lots of pictures now.
Okay, good.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of
I'm
brutalism.
actually finishing up this save that I started where I'm like at the final boss and then stopped, which is something that I do a lot with games that I really, really like, where I'll just get to what I know is the end and then be like, whew, okay, when I finish this, I want to be like all settled. Like, I want to have like a bunch of snacks. I want to make it all cinematic. Want to just like really feel the ending of this. And then I don't play to like 6 months to a year.
Mhm.
You know? Because it'll
totally
never
know.
feel like the right time to finish an experience that I've enjoyed so much. But I decided now's the time because I want to play the DLC. And revisiting this game, Rob and I have been talking a little bit, but like, holy shit, that is just a perfectly fucking designed game. It's so good. It's just like, we're talking a lot about how good like the basic tools you get in the game are. Like, the pistol feels perfect. And
Yeah.
then like levitating and telekinesis. Like, you basically don't need anything other than that and like the dash move. And you can do every combat encounter, which I know some people didn't like, but I love that because it means that it is a perfectly balanced game where the only impediment to me being better at it is my own skill.
Mhm.
Just so, I mean, my boyfriend also just got it for the first time, so I started playing it so that I could talk to him in detail about all the good things that are in this game. He just got to the freaky puppets, which I was really excited about. And
They're very freaky.
there's something also about like the tone of the game when I am trapped inside. I like really haven't been. I mean, everyone's been inside, but like I should not really be leaving the house until tomorrow, because that'll be when I've been symptom free for 72 hours,
Mhm.
and there's something about being entirely inside an interior space, but slowly gaining mastery over every single part of it until it is like your ultimate domain that feels very satisfying right now, I have to say.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's-
Kyle, go ahead. Sorry.
I just really like Control. It's just a good game, that's all. I love it.
Kyle, you've been checking out the DLC. This is
Yeah.
the first story DLC, right? The previous one was just
Yes.
kind of like combat stuff.
Yeah, I didn't even look at that. I think it was just an update, actually. That
Okay.
first thing, I believe. Because
What
I
is
think something
the-
they said like this is the first DLC.
Oh, I
guess
see what you're
it's
saying. Like that was like a patch that added a new mode or something.
Yeah,
but this
I'm
is
pretty
like
sure.
actually
Paid.
How
paid
is it?
DLC.
What's the deal with it? This is the foundation,
The
right?
Foundation, yes. So it takes place, picks up right after the end of the game, where I guess spoilers. I want to mark here just in case anyone. I was just gonna
listen.
I'm gonna mention some light things, but whatever.
Okay.
Spoilers. So Jesse's the director at this point, like full on, like you've got that outfit, right? So like you're at this point just kind of
Yeah, that incredible barrette.
Yeah, it's fucking great. The fucking little triangle. It's like I forget what. It's like
It's the pyramid.
The
Yeah, yeah,
pyramid,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
Oh, so good.
I love it. And you get I forget what the like beginning of this is already, but essentially you're told to head back down to where you at one point during the game met Ati, and he was going on vacation. That's the foundations of the building, and a portal opens up in one area and leads you to this completely new area that you hadn't seen before, that is made up of a bunch of different interesting cave systems, and also bits of the astral plane are leaking into this one in a really cool way.
Cool.
Like,
Oh, neat.
yeah, it's like great, beautiful, and terrifying at the same time. Where like once I opened a door to like a fucking bathroom, and then there was just white space, and I almost like fell to my death. Like it was
Really good.
It's really good, and God, the lighting in this game is so fucking good. Especially in this part, there's this great kind of thing where you're expected to be in a building, but this cave system feels natural, and at certain points the light streaming in from, I guess, the astral plane is the light source that we're getting, or it's artificial light, but it's the same temperature of light, so it's really creates this great disorienting feeling of like, where am I right now? Like, what is happening? And so like the whole point of that DLC is then to figure out like why the astral plane is leaking in, and you get to and this is all like within the first hour, but like then it kind of opens up. You get to this pillar that they call the nail, which is a pillar of like that rock that exists in the astral plane that like all the platforms are made out of, right? Like it looks like kind of like obsidian or something. I'm not exactly sure if they ever mentioned what specific type of rock it is, but there's just one giant pillar, but it's like broken, and you have to figure out why it's breaking, and you get a new power.
Oh, cool.
And this was interesting because it feels like the choice here might actually make some sort of like large difference, because essentially what these two powers are, one of them is you're able to break through certain type of crystals. There's this new kind of aqua colored crystal that you see on walls and blocking off certain paths. And one of the powers is you are allowed to break through those. And the other power is you, if you see kind of low crystals on a wall, you can kind of pull them out, almost like Full Metal Alchemist style, like making rocks form out of the ground situation.
So do those
you know?
are those like usable as platforms and stuff, basically? Or
Yeah, so for a lot of it is like you're pulling platforms. They have a limited time, so you're like pulling platforms, jumping onto it, looking for the next one, and trying to pull it out before the one below you crumbles. And also there are some on the ground, which if you time correctly, they turn into spikes that you can hurt enemies with, which is pretty fun, but doesn't happen as often as you would hope or like. Also, there are some that are on the ground that basically turn into cover, which is fun. You can kind of
that's cool.
Move around and like make cover appear in different areas. It is still places where they've placed it, but it creates this kind of there's this new dynamic where it's like you can change cover, and like it feels much more active to like kind of pull it up and be like, all right, I'm gonna move to that one after I pull it up, and it's a really neat power. That's the one that I picked. Obviously, the other one. So here's the thing: is like from there, it seems to open up, and the path that I took was because I had the power to pull things and to pull things out, and not the power to break through things. So I'm really curious how different the other combat encounters are with the other power, or whether or not eventually, like I've only played like 2 hours, and I think there's still 2 hours left. I've heard it's around 4 to 5 hours of DLC content. So I don't know if you ever circle back around or not. I haven't gone that far and get the second power, but at the beginning you're given that choice, and
it's
it
so
splits
interesting.
off. So
that's also a good. I like how quickly we've moved. We're like not quickly, but there's a degree to which it sounded in a moment like you were speaking about like psychoanalytical like processes of like, well, either we break through things or we pull things out, right? Like we either make things that are hidden emerge, or we make things that are obstacles explode so we can get to the truth, which is an extremely control thing to leverage, you know?
Yeah. It's really great. And story-wise, there's also a lot of really interesting new tidbits that I don't want to spoil. There one thing
is there Ati content if we're in the Foundation? Is there Ati?
There hasn't been so far.
Is there martial content?
Yes. That's the part that I don't want to say any more about, but there is martial content, and it's great.
All right. Whisper
so
to
far,
Mikado.
It's very interesting.
Is there any explanation for why they all carry Lewis guns?
Nothing about the guns yet. I'm sorry.
Damn it.
But there's also been kind of an interesting look at, because this is some of the, like, because the Foundation is so old, and it was one of the earlier things that they kind of stumble upon, like the Bureau stumbles upon. There's some early looks at the structure being different of what a director is, and like who, like what the Bureau even is in its formation. This is mostly happening in like the documents that you pick up, because there's a lot of kind of left behind, abandoned outposts from like early expeditions into this area. So it's all, it's been really neat. It's been really fun getting back into that world. I love it.
Awesome. Cool. Anyone else have control thoughts?
Just check out that screenshot I posted in the podcast channel.
Let me take a look here. This is a screenshot you took?
Yeah, so this is, going back to it now,
nice.
running
Christ.
with full detail, RTX
Wow.
everything.
Yeah, that's good.
That's wild.
Oh wow, I hadn't even
That's
looked.
the fucking X-ray light box in her iris.
That's incredible.
Wow.
We're describing a photo in which Jesse, the lead character, is in the extreme foreground, and then a number of people are in the background.
Yeah, they still
other
are. They're
patrol
just
agents.
captivated by the object of power that everyone is staring at.
Right. It's
Oh,
it's
right.
everything is in this kind of like amber light, this amber haze, and there's like it's very pretty. You'll have to trust us.
Yeah.
The detail of like the material detail is really good.
Yeah.
I remember
terms of-
Chris Person and I had a really long conversation when I was still at Kotaku about this very specific detail and control that we have never seen any other game get right, but this game gets right. The physics of the projectors is exactly perfect. You can stand in front of a projector and block its beam, but you can also knock it, and the beam will distort in the ways that an actual projector would.
Mhm.
Yeah, they're
I have
lighting
never-
it's fucking wild. I don't understand how they
I've
did
never
this.
seen
It's
a
so
game
good.
do that before. I've
Yeah.
never seen a game do that before. It's absolutely, like, it's mind-blowing when you think about the level of detail in this game.
It's also wild. I'm trying to find it, but I saw this thread on Twitter that I was doing kind of lowest settings, highest settings comparisons, and even on the lowest settings, this game looks fucking amazing. Like they did something. There's something about the way that they've designed the lighting and spaces that even like hold up even when you're running this on like the lowest possible settings, which is really
I think
cool.
this is one reason I've always been kind of into Remedy games, because I remember when Max Payne 2 came out, I didn't have a computer that could come anywhere near running it at like its maximum settings, but it still looked fantastic and played like silky smooth on a really like janky ass PC back then. And they really do seem to do a good job with like getting their games pretty well optimized, and they all have just an incredible approach to lighting scenes. I think Alan Wake is probably the one where this becomes really noticeable, where like Remedy, their style becomes all about sort of photography or the dynamics of photography in the way they render scenes. And it's incredible stuff. And I think Control is kind of the showpiece for that right now. Which is why it's taking me forever to replay it, because I keep stopping and being like, oh, that looks really cool.
That looks good.
Oh, you can almost feel the texture on that jacket. You can, wow, you can see the distress on that helmet that character is wearing. I also really do enjoy Casper Darling is such a good fucking character. I love the scene where he's explaining as he realizes that he's fucked up and a lot of people are going to get killed, and he's trying to salvage things with the HRA. And he's basically trying to explain like, hey, for those of you who get one of these, here's why it's important. But there's not going to be enough. And he's like, it's a really like bleak, darkly funny scene. The thing I really love is early on when it sort of starts describing how things went so wrong with the guy they initially intended to be the successor to Director Trench, your brother Dylan Faden. And the fact that it's so clear that Casper Darling makes excuses for the little wonder child they've kept in their basement, like torturing into becoming like the perfect director. And the fact that Casper just can't see that like, oh no, this kid might actually be really troubled and maybe outright evil. And Casper can't see him as anything other than like a reflection of himself, right? Casper can't look at him and see anything other than a really bright child with limitless potential who, like him, has grown up in the cloistered world of the Bureau. And I do love that bit of characterization that comes out as you start to unpack the story of like, what happened to Dylan after he and Jesse were separated, right? Like who sort of authored this disaster? And all of that is told through these really good, goofily compelling video sequences that, man, playing it through now, especially in like the COVID quarantine era, the weird cloistered energy of the Bureau is a hell of a lot more relatable.
I need to go back to it. I am a fool for not finishing, and will at some point. I still feel bad about it, and that prevents me from fixing the problem. Speaking of psychoanalysis,
Hashtag relatable.
uh-huh.
I got in at the tail end of the Matty Iglesias conversation, and I went to check out his timeline, and he's still fighting.
No, wait, he might be on the climate change thing now.
He's on the climate change thing.
We're not doing this. We're not doing
Okay.
this. Speaking of climate change, I beat Final Fantasy VII Remake. A game that is about climate change to some degree.
Should we take a break before we dive into
Let's take a break. Let's take a break. We should have taken a break forever ago. Let's take one now. Let's fix the problem in front of us instead of feeling shame about it and ignoring it and hoping it'll go away naturally. It won't. BRB. All right, we are back. We are back laughing. And I am going to talk briefly about some Final Fantasy VII Remake stuff. I'm not going to talk about any real plot details. People should go back and listen to our review cast type vibe that we did on Monday, along with Matt Galt. Shoutouts to Galt. The only time you'll hear me say shoutouts to Galt because it makes me sound like I'm a character in a
real Atlas Shrugged
a real Atlas Shrugged. That's me. Shoutouts to Galt. You know. I'm sorry to Matt Galt that he's probably had to live with that for his whole life. It could also be me butchering his last name because he's a U in his last name, unlike the Rand character. Anyway, I beat Final Fantasy VII Remake. People are gonna have some. I played for 40 something hours. I really enjoyed my time. I don't think it's a perfect game. I think that there are some real pacing issues. I think that they get real bad at. I think I may have brought this up, Kyle. You'll have to remind me. They talk about how they often turn a single screen into like a dungeon.
Oh,
they're used to
from the original. Yes. Absolutely.
There's a lot of sequences in that game where it's like, oh yeah, this was a cool 7-minute moment that turns into a 17 or a 27 or a 37-minute dungeon, and it's like you don't need it. There are some real pacing problems in which really what it is they're kind of transitional pacing moments in most cases where like there's a big event. Kyle, you're playing the original Final Fantasy VII now, right? How far in are you?
I played like an hour and a half yesterday. I'm about to hit the second reactor.
Okay.
But what I noticed was that that demo, which is like about an hour, the like remake demo, that takes
first reactor.
place in like 15,
20
minutes
most,
or something at most,
100%.
depending on.
There's some moments where in the original there's a big thrust of energy because you're coming off of a big climactic moment, and here what they want to do is like pump the brakes so that you can go to another like town area and do some side quests and take a breather. And that sounds really good on paper, and once you get there, it's really good. But it can feel really like bad to be like, we gotta go, slam on the brakes. Now do side quests, and it can feel really bad. They don't do a great job of that. I think they do a really bad job of explaining who some of the principal characters are, which is surprising because they actually do a really good job of reconfiguring some of the stuff at the end of this game to explain big time lore stuff. There's a lore dump towards the end that I think is actually really, really good, and it's delivered in a really fun way. But they don't do the bare basics necessary to explain why some of the key antagonistic characters are who they are or what their relationship to you is. I had to rely a lot on my own understanding of like who some major Final Fantasy VII figures are, is all I'll say. I don't think that they do a great job of explaining that stuff, and they also don't. It's tough because
well, my question is this partially like I'm playing through even just that first hour and a half of the old one. There's a lot of like, who the fuck is that?
Yeah, there's that stuff
supposed
already
to be picked up.
Totally, but this is different stuff where some of this stuff though is like the next scene in the game is a character. The scene that would have come after is a character saying, here is what my relationship with this person is, here is what our relationship together is. There was stuff at the end of this game, the final chapter of this game. You get to the final chapter of this game, and PlayStation, it does the PlayStation, like, no screenshots, no videos. And like, oh shit, here we go. And it becomes the most Tetsuya Nomura, like, you know, meta, like, it becomes Kingdom Hearts in affect, in affect, not literally. There was, as far as I know, there's no Kingdom Hearts crossover. Well, there already is, because that's how Kingdom Hearts is already, right?
Look, the third one of these remake games is gonna have Sora in it. Like, I'm just putting all my bets in now.
Listen, so I think that there will be, I think that there will be a really interesting response to the way this game ends, because, for reasons I don't even want to talk about yet, because the game is coming out today, the day you're listening to this. But I will say that there is, like, it is a game that I stand by what I said on the other podcast, which is that you can think about this game's title as a Kingdom Hearts game title in the way that you think of, like, Recoded or something, like remake is like a verb. It's not just like, Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Right.
It's a wild ending.
It is part of a title, not a descriptor of the game.
Yes.
Which is, a different type of descriptor, but a very specific type of descriptor when you put something in a title, you know?
The things that this game has changes throughout, I think, are good in a large way. I think, we talked, there's stuff that changes literally 5 minutes after the demo, and so this is like new shit. And I think I like many of those changes. I think that most of the new content is really, like, the new story stuff is really interesting. I think some of the expanded stuff doesn't land as well for me. I think I'm extremely torn on Barrett specifically for all the reasons I said on Monday, which is, even through the end of the game, he constantly swings hard between racist caricature and one of the rare voices of revolutionary radicalism in video games, especially in mainstream AAA big budget video games. That motherfucker has some lines that are like the most this moment shit possible. I also just cannot stop thinking about this game as in relation to early 2000s American policy. The ways in which I hadn't, when you play this game, you think about the ways in which the Bush administration really wanted to go to war with Iraq. That's all I'm going to say. Think about that. Okay. Because that is what this game is doing to some degree. not as like the A plot even, but as like a C plot in the background. That is what a lot of the new stuff is kind of gesturing towards, which really makes the Mako energy stuff really feel a lot more like oil and less like nuclear, which I know someone wrote in and said that at the time they read it as being about nuclear energy and not about oil. But now it really feels like a fossil fuel story. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like that stuff makes it somehow even more timely in some big ways. So I think it's really worth playing. I think some of that story stuff is going to leave purists just out of their mind, just mad in the way that you get mad after you have been called out. Not for like doing some crime, but because like called out into the streets. Do you know what I mean? This is a game that like picks up a bat and like knocks on your door with it. If you were an old head and you're like, it was good the way it was. So have fun.
Fossil fuel story is like a weird take on Cave Story.
Cave Story or Golf Story. Yeah, Fossil Fuel Story. So that's my Final Fantasy VII Remake shout out. We're going to need to talk about that game more in the future once we can actually talk about it.
I'm excited to dig in.
I want to quickly shout out two other things that I have on my plate. One is Treachery in Beatdown City, which was made by, I think it's fair to say, friend of the show, Sean Alexander Allen, and some other folks. It is a 2D retro beat 'em up RPG set in, speaking of timely stuff, set in a world where the names have been changed to protect the innocent. President Orama has been reelected to his third term. And
I'm laughing both at the change and also the innocent.
Fair. Yeah. Yeah, no. In fact, the innocent in this case are the person who had to change their names or otherwise be taken to court for defamation or whatever.
Yeah.
President Obama has been elected to a third term, and Mayor in New York, Mayor Moneybags, who just is 100%. Why am I fucking blanking? Bloomberg,
Yeah.
elected to his fourth term. Is the mayor of New York, and Orama gets kidnapped while giving an address at the UN about this game. Like threads a needle really, really well, where it's like everyone is excited about President Obama's third term. Wow, remember that guy? He seems so cool. Like he seems like a real person. There's a deep that's us up there. And then he goes to the UN and delivers a speech about the new drone program he's starting. And it's like, yep, you got it. You got it perfectly, Sean. And so from there, he gets kidnapped. He gets kidnapped from the UN by ninjas, obviously. Poor President Orama. And President Moneybags is not doing anything to help. So maybe he's involved in the conspiracy. Sorry, I mean Mayor Moneybags isn't doing anything to help. Your character's dad, who is a cop, it says like, hey, he's like not sending us to investigate the Orama thing. I have to turn to you, my cool kickboxing daughter, and her friends to go investigate. And so you are like, you and your crew from Brooklyn kind of go to investigate the problem and what happened to Orama. And on the way, you end up fighting a lot of people who are just getting in your way, and most of them are caricatures of people you deal with if you live in New York, like dude who wants you to buy his mixtape, or jogger who refuses to like run on the side of the path instead of run, or biker for that matter, who like does not give way. Biker in the motorcycle sense also, who've become tech bros. And the combat system is a kind of like, imagine Double Dragon, or really Double Dragon. It has like that aesthetic, that style of like 8-bit era beat 'em up aesthetic, except that on top of just being able to throw a punch, you can pause and go into like an action menu and spend your action points basically on strike attacks and grapple attacks. You have 3 characters, one of whom is like very heavy into the kind of like striking martial arts, one of whom is like basically a retired pro wrestler who has started running a community center, and the third is the daughter of the cop, who is the kickboxer. And she kind of mixes, she's kind of a mix of a couple of different things. And she like beats the shit out of people in both styles. I really like the combat. I lean towards the striking stuff. The grapple stuff has like a really punishing counterattack thing that I haven't been able to like master quite yet. And it's a game that is just like a really interesting blend of like comedy and action that I've really enjoyed. I think some of the comedy is tough because sometimes you have conversations that are for you, and this is a game for you. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is a game that has conversations in it that the people on this call I would be comfortable having, but it's harder to be like, it's hard to imagine like the 16-year-old white dude laugh at some of these jokes because he'd be laughing for the wrong reasons. The real Chappelle show situation, you know what I mean? Like it hits different when you play a game made by people of color, led by a black man, worked on by an indigenous person, where there is a black character, where there's a joke about a black character not like taking care of his kids, right? And when I know that's coming from those people, like I'm like, oh yeah, everyone knows that motherfucker. He should take care of his kids. But when it's easy to imagine the like shitty white kid being like, yeah, that's just like them. They never take care of their kids. Right. You know, like,
it's a difference between it being an archetype of a single type of person versus a stereotype about an entire.
Right, totally. But also, this is a game filled with black characters, filled with characters of color, and that helps a great deal. And also, just fuck it. Like, sometimes we should get to the place where we can make games for us. Like, that does not need to be. Right. We shouldn't need to, in the same way that that's the case for music and film and art in general. Not everything should be built for the market in that way. So that is called Treachery in Beatdown City. I'll note it also has friend of the show, Open Mike Eagle, has done the theme
Nice.
song to that game. I think it's a mellow beat also, which is very funny.
What?
It's welcome to the Waypoint game, Treachery in Beatdown City. Yeah, so shout out to that. That's on Switch. I've been playing it on Switch. The other thing, Kato, have you played any Jet Lancer yet?
Yes, I did. I played it this morning before we started recording for a good amount of time. It's
That's
been
not
really
out.
fun.
It's not out yet, but I like that game a lot. That game is like,
Yeah.
hey, do you remember Luftrausers?
Yeah, I was about to say, literally. Except I don't think, does Luftrausers have the same mouse thing? Because I feel like it
Oh,
did,
I'm playing it
right?
on Switch, so I have no idea what the mouse thing
Oh,
is.
Okay, so it's just like, so think Luftrausers, but when I remember playing that game, you
One, less
controlled-
Nazis. Just I want
Right.
to get it out there.
Yeah.
Way less.
No,
Less. Do you ever think about how cool the Nazis looked? Not one of the design aspects of this
No.
game.
But direct, like you're flying that plane and you turn around with directional buttons like left and right, kind of like spin you on that 2D plane. But for the PC version at least, you have a reticle that you can control with the mouse, so you can make really quick like 180 movements, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Especially it feels maybe a little bit slower, a little more forgiving than Luftrausers did in the flying. At least the way I remember. I haven't played Luftrausers in forever. But it essentially has this it's got a very anime, like there's an anime like
Oh yeah.
style to it, and also like there's like you get a missile swarm, right? Like there's lots of like turning your engines off, doing a 180, and then hitting the boosters to like do like quick maneuvers. And I'm really digging the art style, and the play feels really, really good.
It looks really
I
great.
aced the first level, which is like you get scores based on which weapons you use, how many different weapons you use, your accuracy, and like time. There's a bunch of different factors, a couple more that I'm not remembering, and whether or not you took any hits. I aced that first one. I haven't gotten above a B and everything.
Oh
else.
yeah, it's been rough for me. I got some D minuses recently, and I've been upset about that. Have you fucked around with any of the upgrades yet? Have you gotten that far in?
No, not yet.
Okay.
I just beat the first boss and got the engineer, which is a great.
The engineer is a good character, is all I'll say.
Yep.
This game isn't out until for like another month, but put it on your list. I think the name Jet Lancer is going to do it a lot of disservice because it's not as good of a name as Luftrausers, unfortunately.
Right.
But people should at least look up the trailer on Steam. It's also on Switch, which is where I'm playing. I'm playing with a controller. It feels good with a controller.
Cool.
I bet it might feel better with mouse and keyboard. But I also want to shout out the music because the trailers have like a very like video game like metal vibe in their soundtracks, but the actual soundtrack has like L1011 or Explosions in the Sky meets Hatsune Miku vibes, not with the actual Vocaloid Hatsune Miku, but with like that genre of like of pop and rock music, you know.
Right.
A lot of those similar types of melodies and instrumentation. I really, really, really like the sound. Like the fact that there was a moment where I was like, is this built to spill? What is happening? Why is this happening as I'm flying my anime plane?
Yeah.
But it is, and it's good. So Jet Lancer coming out next month. Take a look at that. Anyone else want to? Rob, I know that you're still hitting the Frostpunk pretty hard. Are you still playing the DLC, or are you on to?
No, I played. Yeah, so I wrapped up the DLC, and I'm now playing the Fall of Winterhome, which is actually the DLC from before.
Okay.
But I just hadn't gotten around to it, which is sort of. Winterhome is a place that gets referred to in just about every other campaign for Frostpunk. It is the generator city where things don't go well, and it falls into complete ruin and disorder. And so the Fall of Winterhome is a campaign where you sort of take over as the first wave of unrest that got the old supervisor killed and burned half the city has finally ended. And now people are trying to salvage this thing as the winter deepens. and before the storm hits. And so unlike the other campaigns where you basically start with a blank slate and you can like build the city pretty sensibly and like scaffold it up pretty easily, where the Fall of Winterhome begins is you have a huge population, very little infrastructure, and the worst laid out city imaginable. And everyone is already pissed off, and you have no, like, they've just had one bloody revolution depose a tyrant, and you're just the next man up, but it's not like people chose you, right? You aren't like the movement leader. You are more like the assistant foreman, and they just shot the foreman. And they're like, you're gonna fix this, right? And that's kind of where you begin. It's pretty good. I think it still runs into the problem I'm increasingly having with pretty much all the Frostpunk expansion campaigns are really prescriptive. Like, you get a strong sense that there's actually an optimal order that you are meant to discover, but not necessarily a mode of thinking that will help you navigate the dilemma you're given, right? It's like there's correct answers. There's not a correct way of thinking.
Right.
And it runs into a little bit of that. Nevertheless, though, for a game as sort of simple as Frostpunk is, and where it's mostly about a vibe, I think that model still kind of works, right? It doesn't have to hold interest for, dozens and dozens of hours the way a typical more open-ended manager or city builder game has to. Frostpunk just needs to kind of tell a decentish story. And it's kind of compelling, just trying to see if you can salvage this disaster. And it's kind of cool having to fix a broken city in Frostpunk as opposed to just using its pretty simple construction tools and its pretty simple interlocking systems for how the city works to just create another sort of slowly expanding ring city. It's kind of nifty having to go in and be like, oh shit, this is busted and really inefficient. And right out of the gate, kind of the question you have to answer is, do I just develop based on what is already here and try to make the completely nonsensical layout they've created work for the time being? Or do I begin demolishing a pretty flawed but still functional system in favor of putting up a sensible one, but that won't be fully functional for a long time? And like this, so the classic example is right now at the start of Winterhome, the sort of downtown area where there were a bunch of homes, which is the highest tier building, that's all burned to the ground. And then in the outlying part of the camp, there's these huge tent shanty towns set up. And tents have no insulation in Frostpunk, right? So when the weather gets bad, people in tents get sick, and they start ending up in your medical system, and your medical system can't really handle waves of people coming down ill. Like, your medical center can handle 5 people at a time, or 10 people at a time. Fall of Winterhome, you have a population of like 500 people, I think, at the start. And most of them are living in tents as the first cold snap hits. If you don't play that well, you can end up with hundreds of sick people hitting up all at once, and there's just no way you can create the medical resources to handle that inflow. So the question you have to answer right out of the gate is, do I just start throwing down basically space heaters for my town? Do I just start putting those everywhere? And they're massively inefficient from a coal consumption use, but they will keep those tents warm. Or do I start tearing those tents down and do a full, like, all hands on deck thing, trying to basically move the residential part of my town in around the generator, and don't put any resources into making that shanty town more viable, because over the long term it's going to be a resource sink. That's an example of the dilemma you're dealing with right at the start of Winterhome.
It's interesting. It again was on the list of things that I wish I'd put more time into, and again feel like a fool for not, which only makes me not do it at all.
I think you would find The Last Autumn very funny.
That I feel like might be the thing, because that sounds like it's a pretty standalone thing? Is that a place that I could like hop in and play, or should I at least get my
No, I
bearings
think it's
with
totally
the
it's a
main-
totally different game. So I think you'd actually. I don't think I was particularly advantaged by having played the main game before getting into The Last Autumn.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
It's a completely different sort of game. The Last Autumn, we just did a show on it over 3 Moves Ahead, but the short version is The Last Autumn. Basically, it's all about there's friction everywhere in that system, right? Like you can't build the steel mill to just produce steel at a steady rate. Instead, steel comes in waves off of transport ships coming from the Empire. If you don't handle that resource well, you can either end up with steel piling up around the docks to the point where the port is closed, or you can end up with, well, we're out of steel. We've got a ton of construction we need to do, but the next ship isn't going to be here till tomorrow. So in the meantime, we've got like 70 workers doing literally nothing, but they still have to be fed. They still have to be sheltered. And we don't have the infrastructure to really handle an idle staff because it's a work site. So I think it gets interesting, and then it introduces labor politics. A huge part of The Last Autumn is workplace safety. The thing that causes people to lose their shit in The Last Autumn is OSHA violations, basically.
Well, I read this piece by Matt Iglesias that says some places, you just don't.
Look,
it's different
what
there.
works in Liverpool doesn't work at the Liverpool generator site.
Exactly.
If you don't like it, you can go to site 122, which is now a frost-covered wasteland. No, it's very funny seeing how Frostpunk, which, like a lot of 10-bit games, still has a slight, like, the politics are kind of iffy. They're a little suspect. And that is true in The Last Autumn as well, where it's a little bit like the Union, everything in Frostpunk has the Goldilocks version and then the, that's too much. Union's good. But too much Union, bad. Although the version of too much Union, the bad here is you basically co-opt the Union as an extension of management. And instead of it being an actual union, what you have is a management-approved union staffed by lackeys and propagandists.
Oh, a police union.
Yeah.
I see. I gotcha.
But the alternative is technocrats, where you can be like,
Right.
To handle the workplace safety, I don't need to hear from workers because they don't have the expertise. The engineers have the expertise.
No, they've never been on the in the actual quarry, but
Right. Well, there's elements of that where the engineers are like, no, fuck it, let us do it. We'll fix.
But they're
all this.
Oxbridge educated, so what are you going to do?
But nobody likes the engineers, so the workers still get pissed off. Like the engineers can make the work site safer, but they can't actually make people happy.
That's very
because they don't really care about that. And then one of the funny options late in the game is the dissolution of privileges, where you can click the button and you declassify the engineers as a special class of workers who are spared certain manual labor occupations. And the picture of it is a bunch of like Poindexter characters being like flogged into the mines by workers, and I'm like, this is good. I like this.
That's very funny. All right. I was not going to go to the question bucket today, but there is something here that, Rob, I hope you know about. That seems important to you. This comes in from Shane, who says, "Did y'all know that Seamus Blackley, creator of the Xbox, is a bread god? Seamus has provided a foolproof guide on Twitter for gathering your own wild yeast to make bread." There's a thread here that I could link to here. I will link here. Link you to it here. It's in the podcast channel. This is like this like begins literally with him in the field in a picturesque like that's a win. Speaking of Xbox, that's a Windows background screen.
I've seen this thread. I didn't know this guy was an Xbox
Did
guy.
you
then.
also
this is the inventor of the Xbox, also the guy responsible for Trespasser being so shitty. I interviewed him about Trespasser, and I'll throw that in the chat really quickly, because watching him find his true joy, which is clearly baking bread, like since I
Wait,
followed him for this
the-
interview, it's been amazing.
This is the person who made Jurassic Park This is the lead
Yes.
on Jurassic Park.
The sourdough starter of first-person
Yeah, true.
exploration games.
True.
I was
God.
just rereading that interview last night, thinking of articles I really liked that I'd done, and
Okay,
here it is.
There is
But
a-
like he was into baking bread when I interviewed him about this, and now he's started this thing called Bread Club, which is its own Twitter account
Oh my
where
God.
people bake along with him and post pictures of their starters and stuff.
Wow.
I DM'd him one time when I was like beginning to get into bread, and he like sent me a Twitter thread he had done with a tutorial for doing a home baked starter sourdough, like before the whole like everyone baking bread crisis began. It's incredible. Like this is like a phenomenon among tech bros, but he's so genuine about it.
Shane
Jim
continues.
Comey being nabbed by members of Bread Club and being like, we are the people who feed your starter, we bake your beignets, do not fuck with us.
I haven't even got to the best part here. Shane continues. Seamus has been baking bread from ancient Egyptian grain varieties in handmade clay vessels over hot embers with yeast from inside ancient Egyptian baking vessels. And here's a thread in which he uses cultures sampled from ancient Egyptian baking vessels to make bread using only methods. I feel like there really is a line, not even a line. That this is a great deal of work to do to make bread, but I wonder if it's good. And I also, I had to admit, part of me is like, are you allowed to do that? I'm that Vine. Is this allowed?
It's allowed.
Did he license those masters from the ancient Egyptians?
Listen, who gets to bake the ancient Egyptian bread? Apparently, it's the father of the Xbox.
So I have seen so many of this dude's threads. I never clicked on his profile. I was like, it's the bread guy.
It's the bread guy. And then his Twitter bio is, they say you're the father of the Xbox. So I say, if it moves back in, it's paying rent.
He's such a dad. He did also
Extremely.
DM me apropos of nothing to ask me why I had a Gen X symbol, my Reality Bites heading on my Twitter profile. He was very confused why a millennial would appreciate that movie.
One,
Oh my
I watched
God. Oh my
two
God.
things. I watched the Reality Bites trailer 2 days ago.
It's a good
and
movie.
also fell down a hole reading about the incredible video for Lisa Loeb's Stay, which was what kind of catapulted her to fame. Was that was the song for the end credits of Reality Bites. Do you know why that song is in Reality Bites?
No.
Have you seen the video for that song?
No,
I'm gonna
I
link
haven't.
it. Here
I've
we
never
go.
seen the video for this song because I don't like the song. So
I'm
that
sorry.
would be it.
I don't like Reality Bites.
Okay, well, we're really
Reality
in good
Bites is a
company today.
perfect movie about two horrible shitheads choosing each other so they don't inflict their awfulness on the rest of the world anymore.
So you think she's as bad as he is?
Oh, she's obviously as bad as he is. The way that she
Rob
talks
is looking
to
around the
Janine
room as if this
Garofalo,
is.
like when Janine Garofalo offers her a job because she's just been laid off, that set me against her forever. She just immediately shuts her down. It's like, I'm not going to work at the Gap. Like, she's too good for it. I hate her in that movie. But she's perfect for him because they're both terrible.
Well, the song "Stay" became a big deal and kind of anchored that very good soundtrack. That soundtrack is good. That soundtrack is a cornerstone of American alt rock of the 90s. She lived across the street from Ethan Hawke. Lisa Loeb did, and I guess they like met through the theater community. And she had been playing Stay at her shows. And so Hawk gave a tape of that song to Ben Stiller during the making of Reality Bites. And Stiller agreed to use it on the soundtrack and in the credits. This isn't even the wildest bit. The video, which I've just linked to you, which is, again, a very 90s video. It's a single shot of her singing this song about a breakup, walking around an empty apartment. One is shot in her New York apartment. Two is shot by Ethan Hawke, the actor. 3, the cat that appears at the beginning and end of this video is Ethan Hawke's cat. Ethan Hawke's unbelievably well-behaved cat.
Wow.
I love this. I love this so much.
Oh
This
my
has just
God.
made one of my favorite movies like 1,000 times better for me.
Yeah.
I love it.
So that's the hole I fell in this week. That's my
Where is
quarantine
This
hole.
this apartment
He's
is
really
nice
good
as
with
hell.
the
Also,
camera,
yeah.
too.
How much
Also,
do you think this is going for
yes.
these days?
This apartment is huge.
This is like
so
up there.
big.
This is like
She has enough
this is like up there with
space-
practical magic levels of like,
Yeah, she has enough
porn.
space to run through the apartment, which I can tell you I do not have in New York City. So
No. Well, the thing is, I have enough budget to run through my apartment. What I don't have the budget for is to pay for the emergency room visit that would come after when I inevitably break my leg on something. Because of how cramped it is.
God.
Yeah.
Ethan
Anyway.
Hawke is low-key the coolest fucking
Multiple pillars. Are those
I know.
marble? What is that?
Yeah. I don't know how. I don't know what Lisa Loeb's financial situation was that she could live in a place like
No,
this.
this is how it was in the 90s, man.
I guess
This is
so,
what
man.
sitcoms have told me, is
Yeah.
like there was always, if you just looked hard enough,
You could find
there
the
was some
spot.
palatial, yeah. Oh, I'm in
Honestly,
a
I
loft
know-
in the yeah.
I know an old professor, an old art professor that has a place like this that he pays $400 a month for because he got it in the fucking like 70s. So
I'm gonna make a suit
Oh, wow.
out of his skin. Fuck that. Like,
I
need
found
to live
it.
that place. Yo.
Me, I
Yo.
found it. Actually,
Yo.
that's not true.
Yo.
Someone else found the actual.
Uh-huh.
Me, I found it. Go to findery.com. Actually, someone else put in the work to find it. This is my discovery. I discovered this.
you found this?
I found
So
this
this
is
is Lower
mine.
I
Manhattan.
found this.
I made this. This is it. I want to know how much it is. It's a gorgeous space. It's huge. This is like a gallery space. It's like the modern
Yeah.
video of this.
Yeah. I mean, this was like, let's be real, the amount of space that was, the amount of like broken bread frames that are in that video. This was a place where she and like 10 other people lived.
Probably.
Right.
Probably. That makes sense
Right?
to me.
This was
That makes
probably like
sense
an
to me.
artist collective of some kind. Like,
Maybe she had a bad back and just like needed different beds.
sometimes you need a sleeping bed and an eating bed.
God. We've gone way off the rails here. I hope everyone is.
Seamus Blackley rips. Reality Bites good.
It was his thread that is the reason I'm scared to make a sourdough starter, by the way. There's
Wait,
a point
why?
where he's like, because when he was like, I'm out in a field in England, already a dangerous place to be, as movies have informed me. He's like, I'm out in the I'm out in the field and I'm using wild yeast. And then like cut to 2 days later, there's like some sort of black unholy sludge like burbling away. He's like, don't eat this. It could be bad. But if you scrape off the burbling hell mass, there's good yeast under there. I'm like, I don't want to have a burbling hell mass in my bread bowl. I would rather just have nice, safe, delicious starter.
Well, that's different, right? He's
in
like
the middle of,
Yeah, no, he's doing hardcore. He's like on
Right.
New Game Plus.
he's like milling his own flour and stuff. My
He's-
KitchenAid just showed up, so I'm ready to get in.
Which
this
one did
battle
you
right
get?
now.
Did you get like a
I got
tilt
the
head
mini
or
one.
a...
I got the
Okay.
mini professional one. They have a 3.5 quart version of the professional grade 5 quart bowl version, and I
Damn,
read the
nice.
reviews for that, and they were like, it's the same exact machine with a smaller bowl, and if you only are making
Perfect.
batches for like like 2 or 3 people, that is perfect. And it was only $200. So since I got paid recently, I grabbed it. And I am ready. I'm not going to be nearly as hardcore as Seamus Blackley. There's not going to be any personally milled flour in my apartment. But
Cut to
Uh-huh.
Gita, this would never happen to me.
God. Incredible. Well, I'm glad we could go down this rabbit hole. If you have more bread tips about bread makers that we should be paying attention to, you send it in. Your number one bread
Remember when we all
cast.
laughed at all the weird shit in Death Stranding? Like the people who are obsessed with like growing wheat and milling it?
Corey writes in and says, months after its release, would you recommend playing Death Stranding? I wanted to play
my
it during
God.
release.
you
And
know,
good-
I was also thinking about this, about getting back into Death Stranding, and I realized I can't do it because Heartman still sounds like James Kennedy from Vanderpump Rules to me.
Okay, yeah.
I'm just never going to be able
A
to
good
engage
reason.
with that.
Yeah, a good reason not to
Oh,
engage. Yeah, I'm thinking about going back to it. I have this void in my life now that I'm done Final Fantasy VII, and I'm still playing Animal Crossing, but Animal Crossing is obviously now in its like maintenance form. It's in its like daily check-in more than big projects. So maybe I should go back to Death Stranding. Death Stranding, Control, Frostpunk, Final Fantasy Tactics, which they should put on a modern console, please. They haven't, but I want to play it really bad. Anyway, replay it really bad. I just want to be clear. All right, so that's Corey's question. Listen, I'm going down the hole now. We're gonna
Yeah.
Let's just hit some more questions. If you have questions, you send them to gaming@vice.com. This one comes in from Ryan from Kentucky, who says, I'm in the fortunate position of being able to afford a new gaming PC. However, I can't shake this thought. Who am I to spend $1,000 or more on something purely for entertainment when I could donate it to pandemic relief efforts instead? On the one hand, the cost of a PC is a drop in the bucket compared to the resources that are needed for the pandemic. On the other hand, part of me would feel guilty about making a luxury purchase at a time when millions of people are suffering both physically and financially. Giving to a charity is a personal decision for everyone to make, and I mean no judgment towards anyone about this one way or the other. But I would love to hear your thoughts. On how you approach this issue in your own lives. One idea I've had is simply to impose a charity tax on myself, like for every gaming purchase I make, set aside an additional 10% for donations. Thanks for all you do, Ryan from Kentucky. I have like a compatibilist answer here, as is often my way, but I'm curious if other people have sharp takes.
I mean, Ryan came up with a good solution, right? Like,
Which
I mean,
is the charity
genuinely-
tax.
Yeah, like that's not a bad way of like sort of resolving that tension within yourself. At the same time, like, game PCs are fun. This is a time when we need distraction and entertainment. Like, I don't know what your situation is with entertainment. Like, is it frivolous? I don't know. Like, you're going to be inside for months probably. Yeah. So to an extent, like, does this make that easier to handle? That is not the most, there has never been a less frivolous time to like buy yourself a nice PC so you can stay inside and play video games. Yeah. I don't know.
The thing I was going to suggest is to check to see if anyone is a local builder. I like know when my computer goes bad, I can always take it to a place. But I also know someone in Astoria who just runs a PC shop out of his garage. And like that has been the person I've taken my PC to when things have gone bad in the past. And like if you could find someone like that who is still operating, they probably need the business. I know that that is very much a luxury I have that is afforded to me by paying New York rents and living up here, and that is not necessarily the case everywhere. But it's probably worth checking on your Craigslist or whatever to see if there was someone who does local PC repairs and builds, because then you could at least be literally putting that money into somebody else's hand to some degree. Obviously, they would still need to be buying the parts wholesale, and you'd still be supporting whatever big company. But listen, people are working everywhere, and people are going out of work everywhere. It's hard for me to say that like you supporting making a purchase at this point is a bad idea.
I like that you just want to funnel that money into the guy economy.
I know a guy.
It's just, yeah.
Listen, guys are suffering now more than ever, Rob. I don't know if you've been out here, but not just general guys, but Noah guys. You know what I mean?
The Noah guys, sure.
The Noah guy.
Okay,
if you're a Noah guy,
because otherwise you're veering into some territory. I'm not sure.
No, it was the joke. That was the bit. That was the bit I was doing. The Noah guy right now. That's a tough gig to have. Because that's all about people to people contact. That's all about you leaving a good impression, getting a good recommendation in, and you can't do. That's what I'm saying. You can't do people to people contact right now. You can't do the like, yeah, my uncle has a friend situation right now. It just doesn't play out. I hope that helps you, Ryan. We got one more here that I think is important. I do also have a brief one. Someone wrote in, Caitlin wrote in to be like, have y'all seen the 2020 Emma? Like 2 days before our Emma episode dropped. So I hope that Caitlin was pleased by that. This is speaking of Emma, speaking of Jane Austen. This last one comes in from João, I believe is how you pronounce this. It's the Portuguese version of John, and sometimes I can kind of hear an N in there, even though there's no N in the actual word. But Joe writes in and says, I was hearing the episode about Emma 2020, and I was talking with my sister about the Jane Austen's adaptations, she reminded me about probably one of the best ones that is outside of your radar. The 2018 Brazilian soap opera adaptation of Austen's 5 books, Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility, Emma, Northanger Abbey, and Lady Susan, which is called, or I'm going to butcher this, apologies, Orgulho I can pronounce this last one. I know I can. Paixão, Orgulho e Paixão, which translates to Pride and Passion. I'm sorry for butchering this Portuguese. I'm not telling y'all to watch this, as soap operas tend to be very long, and I don't know if there's English subtitles for this show, but I'm sure you would find this weird mashup at least interesting. I'm sending you a BBC article about the soap opera that brings some cool subplots, such as Bingley signing up to clandestine fight clubs. Enjoy.
That is the most Bingley fucking thing to do.
That is the most Bingley thing to do. That motherfucker would love to sign up for a clandestine fight club. I want to see at least some of this show because
Archie Andrews.
It's God, fuck off.
He is.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck.
Oh my God, is Darcy Jughead?
Oh my god.
Darcy's Jughead.
Huh.
Wait a second. It all comes
fuck.
together. Huh. Anyway,
So
this
then
seems like a dope adaptation. It has been deemed not suitable for children.
Okay.
So, yeah. Anyway, people should just know that this is out there. That's all.
Orgulho e Paixão.
Paixão?
Yeah.
I'm glad I'm not the
always-
only one.
Yeah.
This
it's
is
like so, it's so
Paixão.
close.
This is Paixão because it's an X in
Paixão.
there. Yeah,
probably Paixão or something like that.
that sounds right.
My Portuguese pronunciation is bad.
It's a different language, you know?
Yeah, well, they're so close to Spanish that I can read like 80% of the words most of the time, but
Right. But
There's
you're like,
always-
well,
that's a new one. Yeah.
thank you for writing in all of your questions and comments. As always, you can do that by sending them to gaming@vice.com. Real quick, Rob, is your bread situation still up in the air? You still haven't committed? I just need to
Yeah, I'm still
update.
like,
Okay.
because I've been hesitant. I've got
Yeah.
a lot of good
Good.
good leads.
keep sending those leads to Rob.
Yeah.
I need,
Yes.
yes, I want a real update next week, Rob. I want a real, sometime next week. I'm giving you homework, and it's
Well, we've got Friday off.
right.
So it's like
It's
go
bread time. Yeah, it's go
Bread
time for
time.
sure. Go time, bread time. All right. Speaking of go time, it's time for us to say fuck capitalism and go home. You can find me on Twitter at Austin_Walker. We're going to find you, Rob.
Oh, I'm not on Twitter. As
good.
You probably can tell. I just, it's a lot of foolish Twitter drama.
Yeah, I would
on
stay away
Twitter.
from all that if I could.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah. Okay. Gita, how about you?
You can find me on Twitter at XOXOGossipGita, and for a time I was promoting my Instagram, but where the fuck am I going right now? So,
Yeah, not
Whatever.
so much in the yeah.
yeah. no.
Kato.
At A_Kato_appears.
Follow everything we do, twitter.com/waypoint, waypoint.vice.com. As always, thank you to Bowen for letting us use the track Miss You off the EP Pale Machine. Find out more about that, waypoint.zone/BOEN. We'll be back on Monday with more stuff. I don't know what's popping on Mondays. Anything? What's the release situation? Are we out of releases right now? Game
A little bit,
releases 2020.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
a
think
little bit
we don't think we have anything big hitting.
Just gotta play that Final Fantasy for everyone. To have
Yeah, that's the
time
thing
to-
that I'm
so-
excited for is everyone playing that game because I want to hear what people think about that game. So I look forward to that. I hope you look forward to the weekend. I hope everyone who is out there still working, doing essential work or doing work that you can't get out of or doing work you need to do to make rent is staying safe. I hope everyone's families are as safe as can be. Our condolences to those of you who've already been impacted by COVID-19, and please know we're in this with you. Solidarity in this moment is as important as ever across all of the many fights we have to have. So know that you're in our thoughts. Please keep us in yours. It really goes a long way. Your support means the world to us. So thank you again for that. All right, that's it. Fuck capitalism. Go home. Peace.
Mina, that is a foot file. Stay away from that.
That's
Oh boy. Let me start
Dog
uploading my
intelligence
file now
only
so
goes so
that
far,
I
guess.
don't forget to do it. Was it 305?
305. Yes, thank you. Were you able to recover any of that original file, or am I going straight
No,
off the
I
backup?
was not.
Okay, no
Sucked
worries.
a lot. But
Cool. I've got a backup, so I can figure that out.
well, this is
What a
gonna get
weird
bumped till
episode.
Monday
Good
anyway,
energy.
right?
good energy.
Yeah.
Good energy.
Yeah.
Good episode. Good energy.
Just felt like a chaos episode, but
Oh,
in a
yeah.
good way, where it's just like, hang on, we got a lot of shit we
We
need to
gotta
just
get
get
it.
out there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, I
Oh,
gotta make some
boy.
fucking coffee. I'm fucked.
Yeah,
Mhm,
big
mhm.
fucking mood. Kata, do you have a backup going? I think I have a backup going.
Yeah,
I
I've
do,
got
just
one,
in
so.
case. But okay, good. Should we wait until Gita's back? What's going on? What's her play?
Yeah, we'll wait a couple
Let's
minutes.
wait a
Let me
few
message
minutes. Yeah,
Gita.
Sounds good.
I want to see.
Okay.
All right, so back to time that is.
Time that is.
Well,
Did
y'all
we
continue.
lose that recording as well?
No, Kata says he
I
has
have a
backups. I
backup.
just gotta.
I was gonna say
Okay.
y'all could keep talking, but I guess since
You can
we're-
keep
Yeah, we should
talking.
just
we
keep
could
rolling.
just clap.
You just
Yeah,
said
y'all-
my
let's just do
name
a
while I
second
was
clap.
trying to clap.
All right. Gita, you ready?
No, I have to do this clap with Kato. Hang on.
I couldn't tell if she said hold up or not. I think she said hold up. And so what I'm going to do is remind everyone of the terrible Matt Iglesias piece from only 7 years ago. Gita, welcome back. We should do a time that is.
I did it. We did
Yeah,
it.
we did it.
Oh, you
All
did it
done.
already.
Yeah,
Off-
we were
off
doing
mic.
it.
Into our our respective
Oh,
recordings.
magical.
Yeah.
Okay. I like it. I like it.
I actually do need to use the restroom, so I'll be right back.
Okay, we'll take a real break.
Biden gets an F from Sunrise Movement for a reason, Matt.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Listen, it doesn't matter in the terms of climate change if one is a little bit less bad than the other. We're all gonna die. We're all gonna fucking die. Oh boy.
That being said, I do wish there were less reflexive nuclear plant skepticism on the
Yes,
left. That
I do
that
wish
shit
that was
that
also
shit
true.
seems good.
Wait, what did? Sorry, I looked away for a second.
The nuclear plants for now.
Oh.
We should build
While
some.
we're transitioning to away from fossil fuel.
I think
Science
it's
is a
tough.
lot better.
I think that there is a degree to which I'm very torn on it because there's a way in which each nuclear plant is a handcuff to the nuclear plant. But
Fair.
I also feel like, I don't know. I want to believe, and then it's hard when things like Fukushima happen to not be terrified.
Yeah, but even the scale of Fukushima, that's the thing, right? Is it is a bad and scary disaster, but it's still dwarfed by the scale of the disruption that climate change can bring, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, again, but we can have the lesser of two evils conversation so many times, and it's tough to. I'm with you. I think. I don't know. It's one of the issues that I am the most out on in terms of not having a final feeling, which is pretty rare for me. But Kato, are you back? Kato's not back.
I have a dog sleeping at my feet.
Aw, Mina.
It's so good. I'm so glad that we got Mina before this all went to shit.
Oh God, the
There
timing
are
could not have been
no-
better for sure.
More adoptable dogs in New York City. Can't adopt a dog.
Yeah, that was sure. I grew up with dogs. I love dogs. Sure do love the way dogs are a luxury item for people who own their own home, because landlords hate them.
Why am I reading the thread? I should get off. I have to eject from this thread. I rejected.
Just press X.
Are you in the Iggy mines?
And I should have left. I should have left the mines, and I stayed in. Stayed in too late.
Sometimes there's good takes in there.
Yeah, sometimes there's gold in the hills.
There's gold in them there hills.
That's
Those
true.
fake hills.
Those take hills.
I do love that his avatar right now is wearing a mask in
That
part
means your
because
bitch ass is outside. Get the fuck inside.
Well, and also though, Vox ran a story that was like masks don't work because there was like a disinformation campaign around like we need people to not buy masks, so let's just say they don't work.
It was a real fucking. Have you been following Zeynep's stuff on Twitter around the mask stuff?
No, you know what? I keep seeing their retweets, but I don't actually follow. I need to follow Zeynep.
Zeynep's good. Not no one is 100%. Zeynep is a very strong follow though. But specifically on masks, I believe Zeynep is she/her, and I'm going to use she/her pronouns. She was like one of the first people beating the drum that was like, masks aren't useless. You have to stop saying that the masks are useless. Masks are important. We need mask culture here. What we don't have is masks currently. And so, yes, like the N95s should be going to healthcare professionals, but the broader problem here is that, but we should not, along with that, pretend that masks don't help the situation. They extremely help the situation and are part of why the response in certain communities or certain nations has been stronger, is because they already had a mask culture, and we need more of that. I'll find the thread and link it to y'all. It's a good thread. She was very, very mad, specifically at stories like that one.
Yeah.
Are you back, Otto?
Hello, I'm back. Hello, yes.
We got mad at Maddie Iglesias for a little bit, but we're good now.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine. It's
Right.
fine. We should. Do we need to put all of this in? I don't know. This has been a weird show. This is a weird show.
It's a weird show.
You know what? I wish I was a cat.
Yeah.
MK and I were having this conversation about like how good it would be to be Mina.
How good would it be?
It'd be great. What pandemic? Yeah.
Right?
Oh, do you mean this great reward of all of the people I love just being around and needing affection? Yeah, I love it.
Well, and also like we are so terrified of my dog's growing boredom that we are just like throwing money at like dog toys.
Oh,
like
yeah.
even ones that are impractical. Like we bought her a puzzle board the other day
Right.
because we're like, she's smart and she's growing and she needs stimulation. So here's a treat board that is all full of like wheels and gears that she has to figure out. Entertained her for like 10 minutes. But it was a good 10 minutes. She was real happy.
She get that treat though?
She got all the treats. That was the problem.
Oh, fuck.
It was like levels of difficulty, and she was just like
truly the smartest dog.
Yeah, it's rough.
This.
How are you?
How are you feeling after?
I feel
How's life after COVID?
life after the Roni? Oh man. I honestly, like, as soon as I stopped being incredibly tired all the time, I was like started getting freakishly motivated. So it was like
Nice.
really, really intense. Yeah, I like very suddenly realized like, oh, I can make being stuck at home very pleasant for myself. I can get into all these crafts and like now I have like several different embroidery kits in the way on the mail to me, and I bought a KitchenAid, and like I'm really excited.
A
like,
KitchenAid. Holy
I
shit.
bought it.
Hell
Okay,
yeah.
so I got paid $5,000 while I was sick for this writing thing I also was doing.
Great.
It was
That's fucking
freelancing.
sick. Yeah.
And they owe me another $5,000 too, which is the best part.
Damn.
Yeah. I have to finish revisions for them. I was supposed to do it yesterday, but I didn't. But I also, it's like not a lot of stuff that I have to revise. And then they will give me another $5,000. So in the meantime, I bought a KitchenAid and like a bunch of stuff that I need that I didn't have. And a lot of books. Bought a lot of fucking books. I don't know why I did that. So many fucking
Well, I guess
books.
we have time now.
Yeah,
Everyone has
time enough at
time.
last. Yeah.
Okay. I am recording.
I feel like I'm hearing an echo sometimes, and I'm trying to figure out where it's coming from. Did anyone
Oh, you
hear
know what?
that?
I'm a little high because I was on another podcast, so I boosted myself there. And it might be bleeding. It might be bleed.
Okay.
I lowered myself. Let's see how my files look. I look fine.
Okay.
Looks good. Sounds good.
Now Ella wants to be let out because she is upset that I'm not petting her.
Mm.
You know, I get it.
Go find pets elsewhere.
Follow your bliss.
I'm also hearing that echo, Kato.
Weird.
Yeah, mine also showed
Hell
up,
yeah.
Gita.
Hell yeah.
Showed up yesterday. Literally
Fuck.
It was
yesterday.
fine.
God damn it.
It'd
Christ.
be like that.
Ugh.
305, Kato?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. 305.
Y'all ready to clap?
Wait, Rob.
Yo, what's up?
Okay, you're coming in the wrong mic.
Mm,
This might be where the echo is originating.
that's where the echo is. Yeah.
Might be.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll do it.
All right.
That sounds better.
Yes. That is the correct mic. That's
right.
the soothing tones of Rob I know.
Okay. If y'all are ready to clap, let's do it at 40 seconds.
Oh, what?
Okay, well then we're not going to do 40.
40.
We're not.
Damn it.
No.
I made it
We
in
don't have to
time
rush it.
too.
Yeah. 55. All right. Do we want to talk Bernie stuff up top? Do you want to talk about the campaign?
Might as well.
All right.